Okay, I think we can go ahead and begin our webinar. Thank you everyone so much for joining. Just going to share my screen. Oh, I'm having technical difficulties. Okay. Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen and hopefully I am unmuted. Thank you everyone for joining us today for this webinar on tips and strategies for developing a 100K Innovation Fund proposal, and specifically for the US-Brazil Climate Inclusive Education Grant Competition, which is generously funded by Partners of the Americas in collaboration with the US State Department and Senai. I have here a couple of notes. So please note that this webinar is being recorded and it will be available and uploaded onto our website within a week, along with any other materials from the webinar, such as the list of attendees and the Q&A report. If you have any questions during the length of this webinar, please use the question and answer or Q&A box in the Zoom window at any point during the presentation, and we'll have some time at the end of the webinar to go over questions. And please don't use the chat for any questions that you might have, but if you want to introduce yourself, or you just want to write a brief comment, then feel free to use the chat box for that. So chat box for introductions and Q&A box for any questions you might have. We do have an interpreter here with us today, so if you would like to use the interpretation, then please click on the interpretation globe and select which channel you'd like to listen in. Here we have the agenda for today. So for today, we'll begin with a quick introduction to our 100K donor partners. Then we'll talk about a background on the 100K Innovation Fund. We'll cover very quickly how to apply. Then we'll go into some competition eligibility and requirements, the proposal evaluation criteria, and building your 100K Klima proposal. After that, we'll hear from a past 100K grantee, Tammy Guimaraes from Pennsylvania State University. And then we'll have time for questions and answers. If you do have questions and we don't get to answer all of them, please don't worry. We'll still answer all of our questions in our Q&A report that we'll be sending out. So if we don't answer them live today, they will still be answered in that report. So now that I've given a brief agenda and we've talked about what we're going to see today here in this webinar, I'd like to pass it over to Leonardo Nardon from the US Embassy in Brazil for a quick introduction.
Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you. I'm Leonardo Nardon. I'm the Senior Education Outreach Specialist here at the US Embassy in Brasilia. I manage the connection between US and Brazilian universities, and I have been responsible for the 100K competition since I joined the embassy in 2015. So it's nice to see you. Hope to see interesting proposals from you, and hope to be able to see you in person at a winners event, hopefully.
Thank you, Leo. And then I'd like to hear just a quick introduction from Gabriela, who's here representing Senai.
Hello, everyone. I will speak in Portuguese to our partners. Oi, todo mundo, boa tarde,
Hi,
bem-vindo.
everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome, and thank you for answering our call for this event. So, if you have any questions, please.
Assim como o Leonardo disse, bem-vindos.
Thank you very much, Gabriela. And this competition could not have been possible without both of your teams and organizations. So thank you so much for the continued support that you've given us in these webinars and also in the competition in general. Thank you very much. And at the end of the webinar, as I said, we'll hear from Tammy a little bit later on. So she'll give that introduction after we hear about the competition. Let me go ahead and just share my screen again so we can begin with this. Okay, so just a little bit of background on the 100,000 Strong in the Americas Innovation Fund, if you haven't heard of it or if you're just barely learning about this competition and about what the Innovation Fund is. So we are a public-private sector partnership and collaboration among the Bureau of Western Hemisphere Affairs at the U.S. Department of State, or if you see there in parentheses, WHADOS for short, U.S. embassies, such as the one in Brazil that is working with us for this competition, and Partners of the Americas, working with companies, foundations, regional government entities, and more throughout the U.S., Latin America, and the Caribbean. And so the goals of our Innovation Fund are really to build institutional capacity, increase access to inclusive education opportunities, stimulate economic prosperity, and to contribute to workforce development through these competitions. So what does that mean? So that means that we've provided upwards of 300 grants to teams of 578 higher education institutions across the Western Hemisphere. That's in 26 countries and 49 US states. Our programs have benefited almost 10,000 students and counting, and we've received over 1,200 grant proposals to the Innovation Fund since its first competition in 2014. We do have a 100K innovation network that includes over 2,300 higher education institutions across the world. And we received over $20 million from public and private sectors to support the Innovation Fund since its beginning in 2013. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how to apply to this competition. Where to start? The first place that we always recommend that you start if you're interested in these kinds of opportunities is to join our innovation network that I just mentioned. And as you can see here, there is the link to join, which you can click on or enter into your search bar. And a small screenshot of what it would look like once you reach our website and where that button is. So it's right here on the right side of the screen, says Join the Innovation Network. As I mentioned there, we do have over 2,300 higher education institutions within that network that you can connect with and look through our list of institutions that are also active on the network. Once you join, you'll also receive news and updates about upcoming grant competitions, conferences the team is attending, webinars, and other resources and opportunities that are available to you. Once you already join our innovation network, then the first step to actually applying to any of our competitions is to visit our application portal. As you can see here on our website, it's under grants, and you can see there the application portal, or the link is up here. Once you gain access to that portal, you'll have to create an account and a profile. So as you can see here, there are just some basic questions asking your name, last name, institution, just a simple form for you to create your actual profile to be able to submit a proposal. And here we do have an important note about your registered email. So in this form, you can see it asks for your work email. This email is the one that we will be using to communicate with you about anything regarding your application and your proposal. So please choose an email that is accessible to your proposal team and that's regularly monitored. As I said, all communications from us will be sent to this email, and your proposal can only be associated with this one email account, which will be the person who submits the proposal. Your email account can submit multiple proposals, but one proposal cannot be linked to any more than one email. So this is why it's very important that if you are submitting your proposal or your application, that you choose an email that is accessible to your team. Step 3 is to complete the required tasks in the application form. So as you can see here, the first task is the actual application form, in which you will actually submit the proposal and all of your attachments. And the second task is the partner information request. And this information request will be sent to all of your higher education institution partners in your project team. And they will be tasked with creating their own profile, which will be linked to your proposal as well. If you were not able to attend any of our past webinars, we did cover how to apply for a 100K Innovation Fund grant in 2 separate webinars, where we covered more about competition eligibility and requirements, building your proposal team, an overview of the actual application and of the submission process. So if you were not able to join those, we do have our webinar recordings and our materials on our website right here under our webinars page. So you can access those webinars and also any past competitions there. So let's talk about specifically this competition and how you will actually submit your proposal. For this competition, we do have 7 grants available of up to $40,000 per project team. So this means that it will just be for your team and not per institution. I know that's one of the questions we get asked frequently. The grant is for your entire project team. And what can your team consist of? So eligible partnerships. This is a US-Brazil competition, so only institutions in the US and Brazil are eligible. And for the required partnerships, we do require that your team consists of at least 1 US higher education institution, that is any college or institution in the US, and 1 Senai higher education or Senai innovation institution. Once you meet the minimum required eligible partnership, then you can always add on to your team. And we have a recommended partnership, which is having 1 US higher education institution, 1 Senai higher education or innovation institution, plus 1 Brazilian higher education institution that is not Senai in your team. So that's our recommended partnership. But you only do need to meet the requirement. And from there, you can add on as many other institutions as you'd like. So it is possible to have a team of 3, 4, or even 5 institutions as long as you do meet the requirement. Eligible thematic areas for this competition. I didn't have space to write all of the themes that are eligible in this competition, but these are just some of the themes that you can create your projects around, such as biodiversity protection, climate justice, climate technology, renewable energy, and more. And we do suggest that you read the request for proposals that is on our website in English and in Portuguese to gain more information about what sort of themes you can base your project around. For program components, what do we want you to do actually with these grant resources? So with the grant, we expect higher education institutions in your team to, number one, implement new inclusive exchange and training programs between the US and Brazil in climate-related fields of study. And number two, start, sustain, or expand a strategic, ambitious climate action project that leverages the unique capacity and skills of your community. So that's two items that your projects do need to have. That's the exchange and training programs of students and or researchers, and the climate action project. Additional requirements and considerations. So the in-person exchange of students and researchers is required in at least one direction, and programs can include researchers and scientific and technical personnel, but we love to have that focus on the students. On the right side here, you can see that bi-directional travel is strongly preferred. So we do prefer programs that are able to benefit students from the US and from Brazil, and to be able to have them travel to the other country and to the partner institution. However, there is no minimum or maximum number of students that need to travel for your program to be selected, and there is no minimum or maximum duration of stay that your students need to be in the other country for your program to be chosen. In terms of program design, for level of study, students can be at any level of post-secondary education, that is undergraduate, graduate, or doctoral level. For student credit, students must receive some level of credit from their home institution during or as a result of the proposed program. So this student credit is applicable to the institutions that work with the academic credit system. We are aware that there are some institutions, such as Senai institutions, that don't use academic credit, and they would not be required to give students academic credit if they don't go by that system. But all other institutions, regular Brazilian higher education institutions and US higher education institutions are required to give students that academic credit, just to show that they are working towards their graduation and that they are gaining academic credit, or and that can be in the sense of a letter grade or a credit or no credit, however your institution decides to give that to students. Third, we have diverse students. So special consideration will be given to proposals focused on programs that benefit underserved, non-traditional, and or diverse student populations. And you should be including a student diversity plan in your proposal, which we do have a template for on our website. For this competition, we do have the competition deadline coming up soon at the end of July. So that is the last day, July 31st, 2024, is the last day that you can submit an application for this competition. Once you do submit an application in October, we will be giving notification of the status of your proposal. And around November and December, we will be working with the winning teams to award grant funds. The very important thing here to note is the period of performance. So from January 1st, 2025 to January 31st, 2026, this is your period of performance, which means that this is when your projects will actually be taking place. So if you are submitting a proposal, then you need to be thinking about these dates for student activities, student recruitment, and climate action project development, etc. And please note that these dates are subject to change. Okay, so now let's talk about actually building your proposal to be able to submit it by the deadline. This is what the evaluation criteria looks like on the reviewer end. So you will need to submit in your actual application a technical narrative, which will be 15 pages maximum, that will amount to 80% of your evaluation score, which will include a cover page, a table of contents, an executive summary and program description, a sustainability plan, a capacity, challenges, and opportunities section, and a monitoring and evaluation plan. After this, you will need to submit in a separate document your budget, which will be 20% of your evaluation criteria. This can be maximum 5 pages. This includes your budget summary, which will be an Excel document showing line items on what you will spend your grant funds on, as well as any cost share that your institution is going to be putting towards this program, and a descriptive budget narrative. So the narrative will be explaining your budget summary. And low indirect costs are taken into account in this section. Lastly, you'll need to submit supporting documents. For letters of support, these are letters from all of your partner institutions, basically just confirming that they are willing to carry out this program with you. You'll need to submit the biography and resume of the project team, which we ask for 2 pages maximum per person. And any additional materials you'll need here, such as the student diversity recruitment plan or anything else that you think might help reviewers understand your program or your proposal, will be submitted in this section. Okay, now looking specifically into each section and what we are looking for. So for the executive summary and program description section, which is 40% of your proposal narrative, we are looking for an executive summary of the project, the need for the program explained and justified, clear program goals, objectives, and key activities, including the student learning objectives and the student diversity plan, detailed activities of the students. So that will be a timeline of the exchange activities, including when the students will actually travel, or an estimated date, and a timeline of climate action project activities. Then you'll need to define the number of students that will be traveling in either or both directions. And you'll have a section to write about the credit for students at either or both or all 3 institutions. And then you'll have a section where you'll be able to identify any innovations or new components to your programs. As you can see here, we included a note. Please make sure that reviewers are not left with any questions about the design and purpose of your proposal. That's why you have all of these pages, so that you can include all of the details necessary for reviewers to really understand what you're trying to propose. The next section will be the sustainability plan, which is 15% of your proposal. And this should include what concrete plans or actions you have to ensure the continuation of your program, and how you will actually secure institutional buy-in, support, financial resources from all involved institutions to be able to continue your program past this year of funding. And you'll need to include how, if you've already identified any funding sources, and how you will identify in the future more funding sources. In this section, you can also highlight the financial commitments from your partner institutions, community partners, government agencies, etc. The next section will be the capacity, challenges, and opportunities for growth section, which will be 10% of your proposal. And in this section, you'll need to discuss the capacity that your team has or your institutions have to actually administer these programs and the climate action projects. You should display awareness of institutional challenges at your institutions, that prevent students from going abroad currently, and opportunities that allow you to overcome these challenges to the student mobility. Also, in this section, you'll be required to submit, like I said in the past slide, the biography and resumes of your project team from each partner involved. The next section will be the monitoring and evaluation plan, and this section will be 15% of your score. In this section, and we do have a template for this on our website, you should be showing what you're going to be measuring within your program, target goals, benchmarks, indicators of progress, how you will measure these indicators, including tools and technology for data collection, when and how often you will collect the data, and who will be responsible for collecting the data. So is that the project director? Is it a separate department? Is it the students themselves? And you'll need to submit a detailed plan of all of those questions in this section. And as you can see here, we do have the link for the format for the monitoring and evaluation plan. The next section will be the budget, which is 20%, as I mentioned before. And these 20% include clarity. So please make sure that all of your calculations in your budget and in your budget narrative are correct. And please make sure you're as specific as possible. Indirect and administrative costs. In this section, please consider placing indirect costs under your institutional cost share section. But if not, then our recommendation is to have no more than 20% of the grant resources go to indirect costs. As a note here, I'd like to mention that for our reviewers, they do consider lower indirect costs to be more favorable. And our next section is cost share. So in your cost share column, you'll need to write any in-kind or cash contributions from any of your partnering institutions. And cost share is required from your institutions, but there is no minimum amount that we require. But we do recommend that you try to match your grant at a 1-to-1 ratio. And all contributions from all of your partners can be included in this ratio. Some examples of what you can use as cost share are personnel time, consultants, faculty travel, lab and facility use, student stipends provided by your institution, and any remaining indirect costs. As a note here, also, any expenses that will be covered by your students out of pocket do not count as cost share and should not be included in your budget. Also, as you can see, we do have our budget summary template provided on our website. And then the last 5% of the budget section is for the narrative. And in this narrative, it should be a document explaining and justifying each item and activity that you included in your budget summary. So how did you find these estimations? Why are these estimations there? And any other information that you feel is necessary to explain your budget. We do have here a question that is frequently asked, which is, are there any directions on how the grant funds can or cannot be spent? So there are technically no limitations to what grant funds can go to, but our recommendations are these. Funds should support students and should benefit students as much as possible. But they can go to these following examples. It can be personnel, consultants, student travel, such as flights, hotels, transportation, meals, student stipends, any program materials that you might need for recruitment and or marketing, any rental equipments or facilities, purchase of course materials or software, monitoring and evaluation tools, conference fees, and indirect costs. Okay, and now let's look at, from a reviewer's perspective, what are the questions that they are asked about your proposals to be able to determine if they recommend it for funding. So in each of these sections, you can see, for example, program description. We ask our reviewers, does it provide clear program goals and detail the objectives and activities to accomplish them? And can you envision what the program will look like and how it will be managed by the HEIs, the higher education institutions? In sustainability plan, we ask, have the HEIs put thought into a plan for how they will continue to implement the program after the grant? As I mentioned, that means financial sustainability. And does it show commitment towards the program and the partnership? In the supporting documents section, we ask, do the HEIs have the capacity to implement the program successfully? And what study abroad challenges are they trying to overcome with the help of 100K grant funding? And in the monitoring and evaluation plan, we ask, in addition to program success, will the HEIs measure student learning? Does it include outcomes and not only outputs? And more questions, of course. In the budget, we ask, in the summary, is the table detailed yet clear and easy to comprehend? And does it show how the total costs are calculated and broken down? In the narrative, we ask, does the narrative explain what the cost items and activities are and how they are relevant to the program? And are all cost items in the budget mentioned in the technical narrative? And does the narrative clearly identify which higher education institution will cost share what items? And lastly, for the institutional capacity challenges and opportunities section, we ask questions like, do they include letters of support from all partnering HEIs? And do they include the resume and biographies of the project team? Which both of these are required, but we still have to ask our reviewers. These are not all of the questions that are being asked, but this is just so that you can get an idea of what the reviewers are looking at and what their overall idea of each section is. Lastly, we do have all of our 100K templates and sample documents on our website. For templates, we have the monitoring and evaluation plan, the budget summary, and also the student diversity and recruitment plan. And for sample documents, we have a sample budget narrative and a sample 100K proposal, a complete proposal on our website. A note here is, please make sure that all of your proposal documents are submitted in English. Although we do have our format and our request for proposals available to you in Portuguese, all of our materials should be submitted in English. And that's because not all of our proposal reviewers speak Portuguese. And lastly, just some final tips before I pass it on. Please don't wait to begin writing your proposal or looking for a partner. Do it as soon as possible, so that way you can have as much time as possible to actually include all of the details of your proposal and think about how you'd like to implement the program successfully. So that means looking for a partner now, and you can do that through the 100K Innovation Network or through, after each webinar, we're sending a list of attendees that said that they'd like to share their information. You can look through that to find a partner. And once you find a partner and you've created your project team, ask them for a letter of support as soon as possible. And that way you have that out of the way and you don't need to worry about that at the last second. And you can also request them to complete the HEI partner profile form as soon as possible. Okay, so now that we've reached the end of my section, then I'd love to pass the microphone over to our past previous 100K grantee, Dr. Tammy Guimaraes from Pennsylvania State University to talk about her experience implementing and developing a successful 100K program.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mariana. And thank you for the invitation once again. This project has been amazing for us here at Penn State and for our partner institutions. So really thankful for all the support that we received from 100K, from the embassy, from Sinai, and everyone that was involved during this project. I have a kind of a summary of what our proposal was like and what our project ended up accomplishing and the like. In the interest of time, I'll kind of just skim through everything so that we have some time for questions and answers at the end. So as Mariana said, my name is Tami Guimarães. I'm an assistant professor in mechanical engineering at the Pennsylvania State University in Pennsylvania in the United States. Our project was called Optimization of Amphibious Aircraft for Amazon Rainforest Operation, which is something that brought together a lot of the interests that I have as a researcher, such as performing experimental fluid mechanics, aerodynamics, design and wind tunnel testing, but also opening these doors for students from the US to experience Brazil and for students from Brazil to be able to experience life at Penn State as well. So the main goals of my project were to establish an international relationship, research partnership in the field of aerodynamics of amphibious aircraft, and to provide students with the opportunity to visit another country, learn and improve their language skills, and to experience differences in work culture in different parts of the world. I partnered with Senai Cimatec in Salvador, and with the Federal University of Minas Gerais, or UFMG, in Belo Horizonte. And so it was the recommended configuration. We had one university from the US, one higher education Sinai Institute, and one higher education institution in Brazil as well. The key activities that we had and the impact that we got from this project were, again, we focused a lot on the research partnership. We had a phased approach to aerodynamics research, which included computational and experimental goals. And this is going to be specific to whatever you are writing about. So we had each one of our institutions do part of the project, but we all worked together through weekly meetings on each one of the topics. So we had the Senai Cimatec work on the computational part of the work. We had design and preliminary wind tunnel tests at UFMG, and then we concluded the program with wind tunnel tests at Penn State. For the mobility portion, we had 2 Penn State students who traveled to Brazil in addition to myself, so 2 students and 1 faculty member during spring break in 2023. So we were in Brazil for about 8 days. We visited UFMG and we visited Sinai as well. And here are some of the pictures that we took during our trip. For this part of the program, I think most of the students that were involved were undergraduate students. The ones at Penn State were from mechanical and aerospace engineering, and the ones at UFMG were in aerospace engineering, and the ones from Senai Cimatec were in the mechanical engineering department. We also had 1 master's student from Cimatec with us, and of course took students to Brazil, and we had to experience the culture. We got to visit touristic spots in both Belo Horizonte and in Salvador, and also to experience the food in Brazil. It was a really great trip. Then for the second portion, the Brazilian students traveled to Penn State for a month and the Brazilian faculty for 2 weeks in summer 2023. So a year ago, we had the 4 students, 2 from UFMG and 2 from Senai Cimatec, plus the 3 faculty, 2 from Senai Cimatec and 1 from UFMG here at Penn State with us. And here's some pictures that also depict some of the activities. We also did research. We were at the wind tunnel, but we also had the chance to have several cultural experiences. We participated. We did some volunteer work. We went out for lunch. The picture on the right here, we're at a baseball game at the Penn State campus. And here at the bottom, we were really lucky that we were able to coordinate a visit to the Embassy of Brazil in Washington, D.C. right after the new ambassador arrived last year. So she was really welcoming to us. We had the chance to also meet. They invited Dr. Ramon de Paula, who is an engineer who's been working at NASA for over 30 years, who was born and raised in Brazil. And he shared a little bit of his story with us. And you can see that the picture is really crowded because we were also fortunate to be able to coordinate this visit to the embassy with another group who had been awarded an 100K grant, and they were from West Virginia University and from UFMG coincidentally as well, and from another Senai too. So we spent a day in DC, and that was really great. As I mentioned, our partner institutions were Senai Cimatec. We had 2 faculty members and 2 students. At Penn State, we had myself as the faculty member and 3 students. At UFMG, we had mainly Professor Eduardo Bowser, but we had other 2 professors participating as well, and 2 students. And this is a picture of all of us together at Penn State while they were in the US. Some of the outcomes that we got from the project is that we were successful in establishing this research collaboration between the 3 institutions. The alumni from our program, so these students who either went to Brazil or came to Penn State, are successfully continuing their education and their international contributions. 2 of them are in master's programs now. 1 is working at Boeing. 1 is in an exchange program in Germany. So this international experience was a big motivation for them. We presented our work at the embassy. We have presented given a couple of presentations at international conferences. We have 1 paper accepted for a publication in a conference in Brazil and 2 abstracts submitted for an international conference in the US. And we also have a new study abroad program that's been established at Penn State that will go to Brazil, that's debuting this summer. And these are all direct outcomes from this project that will help us continue building this relationship and creating these opportunities, something that could not have started without the support of this 100K grant. Just a little bit about our funding structure. So when we wrote this proposal, the award was $34,250. And after we got the reduced indirect cost, so the reduced F&A from Penn State, we had a total of $27,400 available to spend on the project. And we used that to cover mainly the travel, so tickets, accommodation, cultural visits, networking events, meals, anything that was related to traveling either to Brazil or for them to come to the US was covered with the actual grant. And regarding the cost share, we had a great contribution from each one of the partners. So from Penn State, we had about $30,000, which included academic year salary, materials that were covered with my budgets, my funds, wind tunnel time, and donations from 2 parties within Penn State, the Global Engineering Engagement and the Global Programs, and also that unrecovered F&A, which counts towards the cost share. From UFMG, we had academic salary, materials, wind tunnel time, workshop time, and labor, because we had a lot of things that we needed to build during the project. And then from Senai Cimatec, we had academic year salary, materials, workshop time, and labor. We also had, they covered a lot of they had scholarships for the students, and they covered part of the travels for the faculty as well. They covered their meals and part of the accommodation as well. So the total combined was, including the cost share for us, was about $118,000, and that helped us and enabled us to have a really successful project during the year. and some recommendations that I'll leave for a successful proposal. This was actually the very first proposal I ever wrote as a professor, and it was really, really rewarding that it got accepted. I attended the webinars. It was through the webinars that I met the partners in Brazil. And we reached out to the Senai representatives and to the embassy representatives as well as the 100K folks, and everyone helped us connect and find the best team that we could put together given our goals. So find a relevant topic for you and for the partnering country that fits the RFP. That's essential. Find partners that are excited to work on the project and are willing to put in the work needed. This is a proposal and a grant that is different from what is usually seen, especially in the US. So there's a lot of moving parts to it that you really need everyone to be in sync and everyone to be collaborating to make sure that it's successful. In the narrative, provide as much detail as possible on the student exchange and the cultural portions of the program. What are you going to do? What are the students going to do? How are they gonna credit those credit hours within their institution? How are you going to select the participating students? What are they going to be doing, and all of that? And present a solid sustainability plan, which is how this project continues after, or what are the main outcomes of this project after the initial year of grant funding. And as I said, my contact is in the slide. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, and I hope we still have a little bit of time at least for some questions and answers.
Thank you so much, Tammy. I know that was very informative for anyone thinking of applying, and it's nice to be able to see on, I guess, that side of the project development, because here we see from this side, but I don't get to see what it looks like when you're actually developing the proposal. So it's nice to have a project leader here. So thank you very much for your insights. We are pretty much out of time, which not a problem. Thank you so much again for everyone who spoke today, to Leonardo, to Gabby, to Tammy, for providing a little bit of information about our donor partners. And I do see we have Maggie here from the Bureau of Western Hemisphere Affairs at the U.S. Department of State. So if you'd like to give a few words, Maggie, before the end of the webinar.
Good afternoon. It is wonderful to see my embassy colleague Leonardo in Brasilia and Gabby in Senai, Gabby from Senai, Gabriela, pardon. And then Dr. Tammy, it is so inspiring and so amazing to see your presentation. And I agree with Mariana. Leonardo and I have been working with 100K in some capacity for almost 10 years. And so it's really interesting to see, Dr. Tammy, if I can call you that, how you put your presentation is very clear. What were you trying to do? How did you use this funding? It's great to hear that you found your partner through one of these webinars. That's wonderful, because that's what we're trying to do with our colleagues like Mariana and Ben, who are here virtually from the team at Partners. And it takes time and effort just to find the partners. And so what you said about making sure and we've heard this from other US higher education leaders like you, Dr. Tammy, you know what you're doing and you know what you want your students to do. So to find the person or persons like you, other faculty that want to work in these programs or work together to design a brand new, innovative, inclusive exchange program is amazing. It's amazing to see your photos of the PSU students. in Salvador and vice versa. That's what this is all about, is to make sure those students from Bahia can get to Penn State, and Penn State students and faculty can get to Bahia. That is why we're all doing this work. I can see Leonardo and Gabriela shaking their heads. And it takes faculty leaders like you, Dr. Tammy, and people who are listening. There are 29 people in this, or more folks listening. You know, we need you to think creatively and to think in a team and to think, you know, what do my students need that they couldn't otherwise do? And so it's also fascinating to see how you took a grant for $37,000 and then you added three different institutions contributed. So you have a total grant size of almost 119,000. That's impressive. And that takes work and that takes negotiation. And that's to help expand the opportunity for the students and faculty in both countries. So I don't speak Portuguese except for 5 words, but the one word I know is parabéns. So parabéns 100,000 times. And just thank you, Dr. Tammy, to you and your team. We might be bothering you offline to get more information from you because we're always looking for success stories. And the fact that you have students who now work at Boeing or have gone on to do masters or in Germany, that's exactly the outcomes and the results that we need to have to show how this program has an impact. So thank you for sharing that as well. It's why we partner with Sinai. It's why we partner with the U.S. Embassy and the team at Partners of the Americas. So I just want to say obrigada, obrigada, and of course, obrigada to Mariana and team for leading this workshop, even though I came late. No
Thank you
say,
so much,
yeah,
Maggie. If I could just add one thing, because it was
please.
one of the questions in the questions and answer. Someone asked if it's necessary for the students coming to the US to speak English or if we can be creative. I would challenge everyone to be creative. We had one student, a brilliant student from Sinai Simatec, coming from a low-income background, who's getting his master's. He started at Sinai as an apprentice and grew in there, got his bachelor's, still working on his master's, did not speak a word of English when we first started meeting. We were meeting weekly. All the students, and these are details that I didn't have time to get into, but all of the students in the project, they took a class on cross-cultural understanding for engineers that was offered by Penn State. It was all virtual. And just for him to hear English and to participate in those conversations every week, by the time that they came to Penn State, he was handling himself well. He could communicate. You know, he wasn't fluent, but he could communicate with other students and he could make the most of the experience. So it was really rewarding to see that happen. And, you know, it was something that we did not let that challenge stop us from doing what we wanted to do or stop the student who was extremely talented to also participate.
Thank you, Tammy, for answering that question. We really appreciate everything you said. I second everything you say. Yes, please be creative. Please think about how you as an institution and you as a team with your partners can really benefit as many students and as wide a variety of students as possible. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us today for this webinar. Thank you again, like I said, to our team at Sinai, our team at the U.S. Department of State, at the U.S. Embassy in Brasilia. And thank you to not just Dr. Tammy, I'm not going to butcher your last name again, but and all of our project leaders as well from any other projects. Thank you so much for being a part of the impact that we've been able to have. Anyone who might have forgotten everything we said, please remember that I will be uploading all of the materials from today, the recording of this webinar, the question and answer report, the list of attendees, and we'll also include Tammy's presentation on our website and in a follow-up thank you email. So thank you everyone again for joining. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you.
Bye-bye.